Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's bright glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
On behalf of all here and all the faiths and beliefs present, we remember all those who lost their lives on September 11, 2001. We honor the heroism of all those that rushed to come to the aid of the innocent victims of those heinous attacks. Our hearts and souls go out to those who lost their lives for their fellow citizens that fateful day. We ask for protection of all the first responders who risk their lives for us every day, and for the soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen who protect us around the clock and around the world. Amen.
My name is Ethan Cockrell, and I serve as the SGA President and Student Trustee. This morning, we have come together to remember the tragedy that took place in our country on this day 22 years ago, when our way of life, our very freedom, came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist attacks. We are privileged to have Senior Police Officer Michael Mills II with us today to share his thoughts about that tragic day. Officer Mills is an Air Force veteran with 13 and a half years of service from September 13th, 1988 until March 19th, 2002. His specialties included aircraft armament systems, military training instructor, and he is a combat veteran that was deployed during Operation Desert Shield, Operation Desert Storm, Operation Deny Flight, and Operation Provide Comfort. His public safety career started in 2010 when he joined the North Carolina Department of Public Safety as a correctional officer, working at Nash Correctional Institution in Nashville, North Carolina. During his tenure, Officer Mills served extra duty as a member of the Prison Emergency Response Team and a tactical rifle team. Officer Mills left this correctional field in 2014 and pursued a career in law enforcement. He attended basic law enforcement training in 2014 where he graduated at the top of his class. Officer Mills extra duty as member of the Honor Guard Specialized Response Team Crisis Negotiation Team, as a school resource officer as well, and a Federal Aviation Administration certified drone operator. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Michael Mills.
On Tuesday, September 11, 2001, I reported for duty like any other day at 6 a.m., 8 a.m. New York time, to the weapons maintenance shop on Kirtland Air Force Base. Kirtland Air Force Base is located in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I was assigned to the 58th Aircraft Maintenance Squadron as an aircraft armament systems specialist. My duties included maintaining and installing the weapon systems on HH-60 Pavehawk helicopters. After a brief roll call where my crew received our orders for the day, We loaded our maintenance van with the weapons components for the aircraft we were to load that day and headed to the flight line. The 3 other weapons crews were assigned to perform various maintenance tasks on gun systems and remained at the shop. At 6:30 a.m., we began installing the weapon systems on one of the helicopters designated for a routine training mission slated for 9 a.m. This day was particularly different due to the fact that my crew was the only personnel on the flight line during that time. Normally, the flight line was swarming with 30 to 50 personnel preparing aircraft for the long day ahead. At 6:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. Unaware of the chain events occurring in New York City, my crew was working diligently, exchanging verbal jabs and being typical load toads. At 6:55 a.m., a military security police officer sped up to our location and jumped out of his vehicle in obvious distress. He started yelling, "Get off the flight line, take cover, we're under attack." My crew and I looked at each other saying, "What is this guy talking about?" The flight line was eerily quiet and the base did not seem to be under sort of attack. So we quickly secured our aircraft, gathered our tools, and headed back to the shop. At 7 a.m. New York time, 9 a.m. New York time, we walked in the door of the shop and noticed no one was around. This was definitely out of the ordinary because the shop was usually filled with activity and deafening noise from power tools. We made our way to the break room where I noticed everyone hovered around a TV in the corner. I commented, "Oh, sure, we're out here sweating like crazy and y'all are in here goofing off." At that moment, the shop chief, Master Sergeant Johnson, yelled at me to shut up and pointed at the TV. Just as I looked at the TV at 7:03 a.m., 9:03 a.m. New York time, United Airlines 175 crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Master Sergeant Johnson immediately ordered everyone to harden the building and secure all aircraft weapons equipment due to the rumored possibility of our facility being overrun by hostile forces or the target of another attack. The unrestricted communications telephone line was disabled, preventing any of us from being able to contact anyone off base. The only method of communication was a restricted communications line that was used exclusively for military purposes. We sat in front of that TV for the next 8 hours, watching the traumatic events unfold that would impact our nation for decades to come. We watched as American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, as well as reports of United Airlines Flight 93 crashing in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. We watched the collapse of both towers of the World Trade Center, killing 343 New York Fire Department firefighters and paramedics, 23 New York Police Department police officers, and 37 Port Authority police officers. Along with the 17 other weapons personnel on duty that day, I remained in that building for the next 36 hours, unable to communicate with the outside world and hoping our family and friends were safe. Once we were finally able to leave the shop, Master Sergeant Johnson ordered the 4 load crews to ensure all serviceable helicopters were fully loaded with 2 7.62 millimeter Gatling guns and 3,000 rounds of ammunition. This was the first time in my 13-year career that load crews were escorted by security police during any flight line operations. After 6 hours of heavily monitored and tension-filled work, we were finished and finally permitted to go home. I remember the 10-minute drive from the shop to my small house on base. There was no hustle and bustle that's typical for a military base, just quiet and still, reminiscent of a ghost town. I remember walking in the front door of my house thinking that I should be tired after being awake for almost 51 hours. Yet I couldn't lay down, and I felt like I needed to stay in uniform. I remember turning on my TV and sinking into my recliner. At some point, I fell asleep and woke up 5 hours later to my phone ringing and my father asking if I was okay. For those of you who have never had the experience, there is nothing like a conversation between two combat veterans after a terrorist attack against their beloved country. It was filled with sorrow, anger, endless cursing, and language not appropriate for this type of ceremony. Needless to say, I think you can imagine our eagerness to drop warheads on foreheads and avenge those who lost their lives. In closing, I would like to thank Ms. Deans and Ms. Wiggins for inviting me to speak today, and I'd like to thank those in attendance for your time and undivided attention. God bless America.
My name is Ethan Green, and I serve as the parliamentarian for the Student Government Association. We would like to thank Senior Officer Michael Mills for coming here today to reflect on one of the most tragic days in our history and to honor those that have lost their lives on that day. 22 years have passed since the attacks on September 11th, 2001. For those of us who experienced that day, it remains a vivid and unforgettable image. Those born after it inherited a world forever and tragically altered. We ask that you remember the courage of our policemen and women, firefighters and EMS who rushed into the burning towers to bring thousands to safety. The only way we will triumph over terrorism and conquer the senseless tragedy of that horrible day is by celebrating the kindness of the human spirit. Today, as we remember those lost, I ask you to join me in the faith that the good will not only endure, but they will also prevail. We must never forget. In closing, I would like to thank everyone for being here today. Please join us in the multi-purpose room for refreshments. Please allow our servicemen and women to go through the line first. Please, it is because of their service and sacrifice that we are here gathered today. Thank you.